There's a huge benefit of consistently doing muscle activation techniques and consistently exercising that most people don't know about. And this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast is exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing one huge benefit that comes from consistently doing muscle activation techniques and consistently exercising and doing strength training for the long term that most people don't even know about, don't even get to experience all that much with themselves, because they tend to stop short of getting to this level where this benefit becomes an option for them. And so today, that's what we want to dive into with this discussion. But we want to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're talking about today, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Okay, so this idea of a benefit that you don't get until you do something for a long period of time, until you get enough exposure, enough reps in for your body, that all of a sudden you start to get to kind of new levels with things and figure out new things with your body when it comes to MAT and when it comes to strength training. And so there's, a lot of general knowledge out there of like, hey, if you start exercising, just overall, you're going to start feeling better, okay? And hey, you start doing MAT, like overall, you're going to start feeling better. Like you're going to notice significant improvements in your strength, in your function, and how your body feels and moves and everything like that, just by kind of starting and getting started, okay? But then there's something really interesting that happens where you do that for long enough, and all of a sudden, you start figuring out some very specific things with your body that far and away give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to the results and the benefits that you get from doing MAT and from strength training. And that's what I want to talk with you about today.
That's right. A lot of times when people make breakthroughs in their understanding or their realizations, they call it, oh, that was such the missing piece, right? Like they start exercising and they start feeling better. Like, that was really my missing piece to the whole puzzle of this whole thing, in their 1 week into exercise or whatever, which is what Charlie was saying. You get started with exercise, most people feel better, and we know we have to exercise to start feeling better. Same with MAT. People are usually blown away within the first month of their experience getting regular MAT. They're like, this is literally the missing piece that I didn't even know was missing. And, you guys listen to us often, so you guys know it's not like the mystery piece, right? But what really changes as you do things for a year, for 2 years, for a decade, for 2 decades, is learning literally the quirks and the unique pieces of your body through regular exercise and regular MAT that really, in my opinion, are, I don't know if they're like the missing pieces, but they're more of like the very specific pieces for your body. You see, our muscles and our nervous system, they need stimulation to be healthy and to be feeling good. It'd be like saying I used to not sleep and now I do sleep. So I feel so much better now because I am sleeping. Everyone in the world would be like, well, of course, everyone needs sleep. You need to have that recharge time. Our muscles need to have that stimulation, that regular stimulation. But what really is really cool is when we've seen clients for years and we come across a new pattern or a combination or a quirk that really brings things together physically for them that neither of us would have known had we not been doing it for a year, 2 years, a decade together to realize this quirk about someone. So here's a really good example is I have a client that has a lot of low back tightness and a lot of hip tightness, and we've been working through muscle activation techniques, doing a little bit of exercise, and the frequency in which I see her leads us to always having to work on things like in her core and in her hips that make her feel really, really great. And today we just decided to explore some newer, further down the line things because we had established a bigger baseline. She'd been coming in more consistently for the last 6 months, more than she ever has. and we got to get to some knee muscles, which the knee muscles, they do cross into the hip. And so they do have an influence over the hip. But anyways, we never had the ability to get to that area until today. We worked on them, and she was like, wow, I literally can't believe the power of this is having over how my back was feeling and how my hips were feeling. And so it was like literally a quirk that we didn't know was going to be like this mystery piece for her until we got to it, until we had the baseline, until we had all of that years of stimulation and the last 6 months of like a little bit more hefty work to find this little quirk about her. So that is where I think a lot of the magic of fitness and MAT come in after you've gotten started, right? Once you're checking the box, that is a big, big step. But the things that you learn because you have this foundation and you're building up and building up and building up and learning about your body are probably more powerful than, just that experience is way more powerful than just, following a random program or even just that getting started step, because you're learning how to customize to your body.
Exactly. So, when you first start out, like everything is just going to be a stimulus to your body. And if you're going from nothing to something, it's largely going to be a stimulus in the right direction because it is a stimulus that your body needs in terms of like challenging your muscles, getting your muscles to work, everything like that. But you're right, Julie, like once you build that solid foundation and your body's like, okay, like we have leveled up in terms of our fitness, in terms of our strength, in terms of how we're functioning, then getting into these, like you're saying, these little quirks or figuring out these, unique things about your body that really only happen through exploration, continuous exploration of, hey, what if I didn't exercise this way instead of that way? Or, what if we worked on a different area of my body with MAT than, what we have spent, however long working on. That's where you start to see kind of new levels get unlocked. It's like, oh, wow, yeah. No, I didn't know how big of a piece, this would be. I didn't know how big of a piece the quadriceps would be. I didn't know how big of a piece the hamstrings would be. And then all of a sudden it's like all the baseline work that you've been doing to build that foundation, it like all comes together and gets amplified. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, this is really awesome now because I feel like that missing piece, if you just would have gone there at the start, it may have been like, okay, yeah, like I'm noticing some difference, but because, for your example, Julie, you spent a long time getting her core stronger, you spent a long time getting her hips stronger and functioning better, and now all of a sudden you go to her knees today and she has the opportunity to be able to take advantage of the strength that was built in her core, the strength that was built through her hips. And it kind of ties the whole thing together. And because of that, it becomes a much more impactful session in a much more impactful area for her body than it ever would have been if you just would have started there on day one.
That's right. And it's almost like because we're getting like the bases covered regularly in terms of her MAT needs and her exercise needs, then we get to like explore more, right? Another really good example I had just maybe 2 weeks ago is one of my clients, she likes to pick up pretty heavy cases of like glass water bottles. So like really heavy. She's like, they're like almost 40 pounds. I was like, wow, that's significant. And I remember her picking up stuff in the beginning, like before she started exercise. She's like, it's really hard to pick stuff up. It feels like it flares my body up. And I was like, okay, well, the first step is not like a mystery. Like we got to start exercising. Like you're just generally weak. Like you do not have a baseline of strength because you're not practicing it. Just like any other human on the planet, if you're not practicing your strength, you are weaker than you need to be. And so a lot of the things that she thought were really specific quirks were just related to not regularly exercising, which is the same as when people have regular aches and pains, regular inflexibilities, regular mobility issues. It's like, those aren't all that unique. It sounds like you need to start some MAT. But the unique stuff pops up when you start regularly exercising and there's one or two things that are sitting there that are still really tough or still really flare you up, or you've been doing MAT for a year and you're like, this one thing is still tight. Everything else has changed because we've started doing the MAT with this one thing. Those are like the most direct clues, because we know the foundation is being taken care of. But that's when us, like as a practitioner, or you as the the user of your body, can really start taking a deep dive and asking the questions of like, okay, what is really missing here? And a lot of times it's something very specific that we can create like a program around, or certain exercises around, or certain MAT in the body around, versus just, okay, in general, we just need to get going. But again, those are the things that really kind of bring things full circle, where you feel like, wow, it feels like, okay, everything is getting addressed now. Because again, our muscles need that stimulation, and most people just starting feels great, but then those little missing puzzle pieces cannot reveal themselves until you've been doing it for quite some time.
That's exactly right. Okay, so if you're listening to this right now, how you might be thinking, how does this apply to me? All right, and really what we want you to take from this is step one is you just have to get started. Okay, you just have to start doing strength training, start doing MAT, get your muscles functioning better, start challenging your muscles on a regular basis to build their strength. And that really is step one. And then after you do that on a consistent basis, we're talking like multiple times a week with your strength training, at least a couple times a month with your MAT, and you do that for like 12 months, now all of a sudden you have built a strong enough foundation where you've kind of earned the right to figure out, okay, what are these, little things that are really going to make the biggest difference in my body? Because until you build a strong enough foundation like throughout your system, it's going to be really hard to figure out like what those one or two specific things are, because just kind of everything is going to improve, right? Like everything is going to get you better. And that's not a bad place to be. The challenge is that if you are at that place of just kind of early on, all right, like everything's getting better, and eventually what ends up happening for most people is they can hit these like little plateaus where they feel like, okay, before, I was doing this thing and like everything was making me better. And now I feel like I've hit this level and I'm just staying here. And usually when you feel like, oh, I'm just staying here, like I'm not getting any improvement, I'm not getting any better. Oftentimes that can be the indicator of like, okay, there's going to be something more specific that's unique to your body. We got to figure out that, will help to kind of like unlock this next level for you. But you need to kind of get through all the early stuff where your body's just going to naturally improve, but by adding some stimulus of strength training and MAT, get through that. And we usually say, okay, after about like kind of 12 months of that consistent exposure, that's when like these really specific things come out that end up being like the biggest bang for the buck in terms of like, oh wow, like my body feels way better when we work on this area, or we bring this group of muscles back on board. My body notices a huge improvement. We change the exercise and do it this specific way, and it's like, wow, like my body responds really well to that. So again, in your mind, if you're listening to this, step one is start. Stay consistent with it, have the timeline in your mind be at least 12 months. And then after that, then it'd be like, okay, cool. Like what areas are kind of really most impactful for me? And that's where getting, another set of eyes and another set of hands on your body and saying like, okay, yeah, these are the things that we're seeing. These are the things that we're noticing having the biggest impact on your system. And then really doing a deep dive into those areas with those exercises, with those groups of muscles, that can be tremendously beneficial. So if this is something you'd like our guidance with, is exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes on YouTube, your ears on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Wherever you consume our content, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating and review, it always means the world to us when you do. We are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.